After reading some of the above comments, this definitely could have been worse, but is something I still laugh about. My husband and I were on honeymoon in Fiji. We had planned on island hopping, and the only set stay we had was at a timeshare his grandma had given us as a wedding gift. That stay was to be our longest, for 5 days or so out of our 2 weeks in Fiji. So we get to this island, and it was immediately creepy. The buildings all looked like they'd been vacant for a long time, neglected and dingy. The entire resort looked like its heyday had been in the 70s and it had been forgotten since then. To add to the creepy feeling of the island and resort themselves, it was overcast and gloomy with only occasional bursts of sunlight. The proprietor was a Fijian who was obviously very proud of the resort he ran, and who had a habit of hovering over my husband and me while we passed the time drinking cocktails and playing cards on the covered patio to get out of the rain. There wasn't much else to do. The second night we were in our cabin, which was isolated from the other buildings. We'd even made a barricade at the door because there was just this feeling that we'd wake to the proprietor standing over us, or that there must be a crazy man living in the surrounding forest just waiting to kill us, and there was a huge thunderstorm. In one of the flashes of lightning, my husband found an enormous tropical bug crawling on his legs headed for the sheets. We decided we had to get off that island. So the next day, my husband went to use the computer while I waited on the covered patio. The proprietor came out of the cabin which housed the computers and approached me, asking if everything was satisfactory. I didn't know what to say really, so I just told him yes. Then he asked if my mother was sick, and, as I was incredibly confused by his question, I told him no, she was fine. When he left and my husband returned, my husband told me he'd panicked when approached by the proprietor and, to explain why we were suddenly cutting our visit short, without letting on we thought if we stayed, this island would be where we met our untimely deaths. He had told the proprietor my mother was sick and we had to leave the country right away to rush to her side. The proprietor came back and I stammered out I just found out my mother was ill, and he informed us, with a disdainful look I was convinced proved he knew we were lying, told us he'd arranged our travel back to the Big Island. Relieved, we took the boat back to the Big Island, climbed into a cab, and took off, ready to laugh off the residue of creepy we still felt even miles away from that island. We were about to start joking when the cab driver turned and asked me, "How is your mother?" It was all just really disconcerting, and in retrospect we happened to be there during a slow time with crappy weather, and as the proprietor had arranged our travel himself, it makes sense he'd tell his cab driving friend the Americans had a sick mother emergency requiring them to be taken to the airport. But in retelling the story, even now it sounds like the setup for some gory teenage vacation slasher movie.